Good evening, everyone. We begin the readout tonight with the closing arguments in the historic first ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president. Arguments that are still underway as we speak. In fact, the 12-member jury in Donald Trump's hush money election interference trial is hearing its 7th hour of summations right now. Nearly 3 hours for the defense, followed by 4 hours for the prosecution, with the clock still running. It appears they will continue tonight until the prosecution finishes. Over the last 4 hours, the prosecution has been arguing that the case comes down to 3 things that they claim they have proven. 1, that there were, in fact, false business records, that the false business records were intended to cover up a conspiracy related to the 2016 election. And number 3, that Donald Trump was personally involved. Prosecutor Joshua Steinglass has been taking the jury step by step through the alleged conspiracy to unlawfully influence the election, starting with the Trump Tower meeting between Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, and the former National Enquirer publisher, David Pecker, pointing out this scheme cooked up by these men could very well be what got President Trump elected. Steinglass did not shy away from talking about Michael Cohen's credibility as a witness, reminding the jurors that it was not the prosecution that chose Mr. Cohen as a witness. We didn't pick him up at the witness store, Steinglass said. The defendant chose Michael Cohen. He was his fixer. As expected, the defense focused heavily on Cohen's credibility in their closing arguments, using the word liar, lies, or lying more than 60 times in reference to Cohen. At one point, Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, called him the MVP of liars. Blanche's closing argument stuck to the defense's claims that there were no falsified business records and that Cohen's $35,000 monthly payments had nothing to do with the hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels, but were simply Cohen's retainer as Trump's personal lawyer. Blanche said there was no proof that Donald Trump was aware of the payment to Daniels before Cohen made it, and it had nothing to do with Trump's presidential campaign, even though Daniels came forward in the days following the release of the infamous Access Hollywood video a month before the 2016 election. At one point, Blanche argued to the jury, quote, "You should want and expect more than the testimony of Michael Cohen," unquote. And that is one point the prosecution actually agreed with the defense on, arguing in their closing arguments that the case did not just rely on Cohen's testimony, but that of all of the other corroborating witnesses and documentary evidence presented throughout the trial. At one point, Steinglass argued, quote, "It is difficult to conceive of a case with more corroboration," unquote. Included in that corroborating evidence are Exhibits 35 and 36, the handwritten notes by former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg and former Trump Organization Controller Jeffrey McConney that lay out the reimbursement to Cohen for the hush money payment in the form of those $35,000 monthly checks. Steinglass called these exhibits the smoking guns. And if you haven't noticed, the Weisselberg notes are on a copy of an account statement from First Republic Bank, noting the $130,000 wire transfer from Cohen's account to Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Keith Davidson. It's also worth noting that Trump's defense left that unresolved in their closing arguments. I wonder why. Come tomorrow, Judge Juan Marchand will read off the all-important instructions to the jury, which will be the basis for how the jury will decide whether Trump is guilty or not guilty. At that point, the jury will begin deliberations, and it is anyone's guess how long they will need to come to a verdict. Let's bring in my distinguished legal panel, Katie Phang, trial attorney and host of The Katie Phang Show on MSNBC, Melissa Murray, NYU law professor and MSNBC legal analyst, Harry Litman, former U.S. attorney who just left the courthouse, and Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney and professor at the University of Alabama School of Law. Harry, I'm going to go to you. You just walked out of the courthouse. What was the prosecution presenting when you left?
They were really effectively, Joy, going just at the points you made with the smoking guns. You know, Blanche made an odd decision in the opening saying that these records were not false. And everyone was expecting that to be really, him to have to eat those words during the closings, and now is when he ate them, because it just seems really preposterous to try to suggest that somehow these were legal services by Cohen, not to mention that Trump as much as conceded it in a lawsuit, in tweets, and the like. So he's really hammering him on just that point now. The other thing he had moved to is Trump's vindictiveness and how harsh he was toward both Cohen and Daniels in his tweets. There was a little bit of an exchange with the judge about whether he could make that point because it could prejudice Trump. The judge said, yeah, you can do it a little bit, but to show Stormy Daniels' state of mind, but let's move on. This is our last break. It's really pretty late now. Steinglass did say to the jury, can you go a little longer? And they smiled back. So that was a slightly light moment in a very long day.
To stay with you for a moment, Harry, talk a little bit more about the jury. Did they? I mean, it's a long closing. For whatever reason, Todd Blanche's was short, maybe because he wasn't actually refuting anything, which is weird for me that it doesn't seem like he's refuting any of the other evidence. But, you know, it's a long closing by the prosecution. Does the jury seem alert throughout? Have they seemed alert throughout?
The short answer is yes. Mayor Chun, in fact, before he decided to let it go longer, said, the judge, have been looking at the jury. I don't think they are flagging. And that is my take as well. You know, it is a long day. There have been times where it's ebbed and flowed a little, but I think they are still very much there. And they want to finish tonight.
Yeah.
They've got child care, et cetera. They don't want to come back for this tomorrow.
Katie, let me go to you on this because you've been in court as well. And the thing that has stood out to me is that it doesn't appear that Todd Blanche, that his strategy is to actually argue the case. He seems to just be arguing Michael Cohen's personality. I have not heard a refutation of a fact in the case. Have you?
No, and we got a preview of what the Blanche closing was going to be during the 4 days of cross-examination of Michael Cohen, when Blanche just almost refused to go near the smoking gun evidence that a lot of us have seen being raised over and over again during the course of the prosecution's case. And that was the Essential Consultants LLC account statement, as well as Jeff McConney's handwritten notes on a Trump Organization memorandum document.
And just to explain, Essential Consultants is the company Michael Cohen created in order to pay Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels.
Exactly. And that is People's Exhibit 35. We've seen it a lot in the prosecution. And what we saw during the course of the closing today was a little bit of Blanche getting animated only when he would talk about Cohen being a liar. The times that he would have any inflection in his tone is when he said it was perjury. I mean, it was that kind of energy that Blanche had. But as you noted in the beginning of the show, the number of times that they wanted to highlight Cohen being a liar, that was the crux of their defense. And the problem is, though, you cannot rest the entirety of your client's acquittal or even a hung jury on one witness when the evidence is so damningly bad for you in terms of the documentary evidence. Right. The documents don't need a credibility. You know, and Steinglass in his closing said, listen, why didn't you make something up? Why didn't you fake something if you're going to be this bad at basically covering your tracks? And then Steinglass also said in his closing, too, because it speaks to the defense's closing, you know, if Cohen was going to be a liar, he could have done a better job. Why didn't he come in and give a tighter story about the Stormy Daniels thing, right? I mean, and so
I think that's where you're seeing Todd Blanche is not an experienced defense lawyer. Yeah. He is a prosecutor, right? He's been a prosecutor. He knows the prosecution has the uphill battle here to prove the defendant's guilt on all of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And what the prosecution fears is poking holes in that. And that's what he tried to do. He tried to poke holes. But Katie's right. It's not just going to be enough, or it shouldn't just be enough to poke holes. You're going to have to tell an alternative narrative, a counterfactual
that makes sense.
That goes up against what the prosecution has presented and refutes it. And he didn't do that. Instead, he's poking holes. And I think, again, this is because this is not an actual defense lawyer. This is a prosecutor.
It's a prosecutor.
Dressed up like
Let me get you in here, Joyce. I want to play for you. This is the recording, and we've played this on the show before, but I want to just play just to refresh everyone's memory. This is Michael Cohen talking to Donald Trump, because the key here is you have to prove that Donald Trump either caused the records to be made false or knew about all of this scheme and was a part of it. Here he is actually talking to his lawyer, Michael Cohen.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding. Yes, and it's all the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that. And I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay the cash.
No. I got no.
It's kind of hard to get around a recording, Joyce. It's a recording of Donald Trump and Michael Cohen talking about the thing. It's a Karen McDougal thing, but it establishes that he understood that they had to pay women, and then the allegation here is that they paid women. I don't see what hole has been poked in that. Have you heard anybody poke a hole in that?
Yeah, so this is why prosecutors love having the defendant on tape, so that they can play it for the jury and let the jurors hear the defendant talk about the crimes that they're committing. And we saw how powerful this evidence was reflected in Todd Blanche's argument today. He suggested, well, maybe it's actually not a real tape. It gets cut off, but Michael Cohen doesn't take a phone call. Maybe the transcript you can't believe. And he points out, and this is correct to the jury, that the transcript is not evidence.
Yeah.
But then Todd suggests that you can't really hear Donald Trump say the word cash, which you can very clearly hear him say on the tape.
Check.
So I think the bottom line is this. To the point that Katie and Melissa are making, there's not a good strategy here. The problem that the defense has is that they want to attack Michael Cohen's credibility. They are hoping that there is a juror on this jury for whom that will be enough. Just the simple fact that they've called Michael Cohen out as a liar. But it's a skillful presentation by the prosecution that says you don't just have Cohen. You have Cohen plus corroboration. You've got this tape. Listen to the defendant's own voice. Prosecutors have told the jurors to use their common sense. They've said that to them repeatedly. This is one of those common sense moments.
All right, everyone, back with me are Katie Phang, Melissa Murray, Harry Litman, and Joyce Vance. Let me go to you first, Katie, because they are back. Mr. Steinglass has resumed his close. Tell us what we are hearing.
Yeah, so we're at the point where the prosecution, through Joshua Steinglass, is explaining to the jury, quote, there's just no way that Cohen wouldn't have told Mr. Trump about Daniels. Why wouldn't he have? And that really speaks to this idea that Cohen was rogue and he went off on his own to be able to save the day for his great hero of Donald Trump. But Steinglass has made clear throughout the course of this trial, not just today in the closing arguments, that Cohen did everything at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald Trump, which kind of feeds into the motive of why he's frustrated, right? There was a humanization of Michael Cohen that's happened throughout the course of this trial. And Melissa noted it before we took the break. You know, when you take a person like Michael Cohen, and even Steinglass said he's flawed. He's flawed. And we've talked about this before, how Trump actually picked a lawyer who wasn't good.
Yeah, they said they didn't pick him.
Yeah.
This is who he picked to handle his business.
Because he knew that Cohen would be
do
the
it.
kind of person who would do it,
He wanted to take a bullet for Trump.
Yes.
And so he's the kind of person who would take out a HELOC on his own home with his wife, you know, financially putting himself in jeopardy, give that money to a third party he didn't sleep with.
Yeah.
And then, he wanted it back, and they gave it to him, they plussed it up. This is so simple. This is the problem with this case to me, is that it's so simple and common sense, and I have not heard anyone refute it. The end. I have not heard anyone refute it. Let me go to something else here. Todd Blanche, let's go back to him and his closing argument. He said this: you cannot send someone to prison based on the words of Michael Cohen. Mershon got very upset. And he said, I think that statement was outrageous, Mr. Blanche. It's simply not allowed, period. It's hard for me to imagine how that was accidental in any way. The jury doesn't determine punishment. It's not them that does that. Then Mershon tells the jury to disregard Blanche's improper prison comment. Judge Mershon, if there is a verdict of guilty, it will be up to me to impose a sentence. A prison sentence is not required in the event of a guilty verdict. This is unusual. Todd Blanche knows better.
Todd Blanche definitely knows better, and this was not inadvertent. This was not a mistake. He wanted this out there. And again, it's this idea of playing on the jury's sympathy. You don't want this guy to go to jail for this. And the thing of it is that the jury never gets to decide what the actual sentence is. The jury can determine guilt. It's a fact finder, but it doesn't ultimately determine punishment. As the judge said today, That's his job. And it's an open question whether, in the event of a conviction, Juan Merchan is going to sentence Donald Trump to time in prison. But ultimately, it is not a consideration that the jury is supposed to take into account. And Todd Blanche, a former prosecutor,
he knows that. And Harry Litman, it is not lost on me that Todd Blanche took that chance, probably because Donald Trump wanted him to, with even Tiffany Trump there. 2 Trump sons are in the courtroom, along with Tiffany Trump, who I'm not even sure I was shocked when one of the pieces of evidence was that he had her number in his phone. Wasn't aware that they were in that kind of touch with one another. But the fact that there are 3 Trump adult children in the room does seem theatrically performative.
Yeah, and there's a couple more points to be made. First, the curative instruction you just instructed. Merchan says there may not be prison for this crime. You wouldn't normally tell a jury that.
Right.
You would just say disregard punishment. But he had so led with his chin, and Merchan was so livid that he did that. And second, to Melissa's point, I agree. It's fundamental, and it speaks, I think, a little bit of desperation. The idea is to try to gin up a hung jury or some kind of person to have sympathy. If you thought you had a decent shot at a hung jury without that, I don't think you would engender the judge's ire in that way.
And Joyce, it sounds like something you say when you think your client is going to get convicted. It sounds like you think he's going to lose.
Yeah. Don't send him to prison, please.
I mean,
I think that's right.
Joyce?
Sorry, go ahead.
It comes across that way in large part. Look, the first line of defense for Trump's lawyers is to hope someone on the jury will believe the government failed to meet its burden of proof of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They just want the acquittal. They simply want to live to fight another day at this point in time. But the problem is, when that's your strategy, you do end up exposing a little bit of your soft underbelly to the jury. And this jury seems very engaged. You know, the judge noted that when the arguments went on for this extended period of time that they've gone on for, it was smart for the judge to do that. It helps to preserve an error-free record for the appeal. But it also does show that this jury is meticulously following along, that even at this late hour, they are tracking with the evidence. And it's not lost upon them that Trump's lawyers have skirted some of the most important issues, the exhibits Katie was talking about, the failure to confront the details of Michael Cohen's testimony. And something that I think is surprising to all of us here and that shows that desperation is you would have expected them to parse through Michael Cohen's lies. If there were going to be 10 reasons that the government failed to provide proof beyond a reasonable doubt, they should have all been Michael Cohen's lies. And at the end of the day, they weren't. That's what the defense is riding on, and they simply seem to have failed to pull it off.
Katie, you're giving an amen there. I see your amen.
Because Blanche ended with 10 reasons why you should acquit my client. He should have started with that damn thing from the beginning. Right. 2.5 hours later, he finally gets to it. But all of it, to Joyce's point, is if there was really just one person and the linchpin to the prosecution's success was Michael Cohen, why not reel off all the times that he lied, right, or that he was dishonest? But the fact that you have to attack 10 different fronts shows that the defense is desperate because they know that they have exposure on so many different fronts, and that's the reason why they're doing the 10. But Blanche doesn't have the effective, he doesn't have the, it's not the gravitas. It's just more, there's nothing likable about him. Like, you're not rooting for him in any way. So when he speaks, you're like, okay, buddy, let's go. But with Steinglass, even though we're logging 4+ hours now, you're like, okay, we're getting there because he's methodically taking apart anything that the defense thought was going to win the day.
I want to go